Friends. Welcome, Beast. Um, I figured what we would start with is kind of going back over the stuff that we talked about last time to just sort of like recap for everybody. Also, I know Miss Niki's lurking. Black Moon is here. Do you guys want to wait for some more folks to pop in and just kind of hang out for a minute, or should we just go ahead and get started? You'll wait and hang a bit? Okay. Well, I am gonna... Nope, that's not what I want. That's what I want. I'm gonna do a little bit of work on these, on some spots on this map that I think could use a little terraforming here. Cool with whatever. Gotcha. Um. Okay. Excuse me. All right. I didn't think that there needed to be those lakes right there. Although I guess I need to figure out rivers. I'm not real good at that.
You don't,
Huh?
As far as rivers, what kind of, is it just going to be between the hexes that you can draw them?
I mean, no, you can put them wherever you want. Let me see if I can get to... You do it with shapes, I think. And you can just like click curves. And then I can change the color. I don't, I guess. River. There we go. So like, I can just like draw rivers, basically. Which, I'm just, it's more like deciding where to put them, Like, obviously, they flow from high elevation to low elevation, but I just have trouble really thinking topographically like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have the gist of it, though. You start high to low, so basically you find a mountain and pick a direction. And that's usually you just follow the course to low land. River turns into a lake, or it goes out to sea. That would be how natural river formation would look.
Yeah.
Of course, these are fantasy worlds, and they don't have to play by our rules.
Yeah, this thing does have the ability to just, like, generate rivers, but I don't really think they end up, like, looking all that good if I do that. Like, they just, like, look at that. Like, that's just randomly drawn, like... You know what I mean? So
that's actually, well, that is how rivers will tend to look. There is a very unique formation called an oxbow lake.
But no, this thing here, I guess it's like that river would not split like that. You know what I mean? Or like this one. Why does this start in the middle of the grasslands when there's a perfectly good mountain right there?
Yeah, why does it?
Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it has an interesting
That's
source.
the thing. It doesn't. I don't know. But that's my point. It's like, it doesn't seem to like... I guess it doesn't take into account its own topography. It just kind of like, makes some random squigglies and hopes for the best. Which is what I would be doing, but,
You just had hoped that the tools were smarter than you.
Yeah, basically. Like, I hope that the tools were better map makers than I am because, they're the map making tools, right?
Right.
Okay, friends. Well, looks like we have a few folks maybe hanging out. I don't know who's on lurk and who's actually popping in, but to review, This is the world that we built. This is as far out as I can zoom, I think. Oh, no, it's not. Good. I can zoom to, like, see just about everything. So, notable features on this thing are as follows. We have, on one side of the world, a sort of ring of volcanic islands that sort of chains into this mountain range on this side of the, continent, on the western continent. We have a few islands. I might make some little archipelagos or something here. I don't know. We have a western continent that has, a big lake up in the top, sort of a big swampy region, and I may actually alter some of this terrain. We have what we think is like the seat of kind of power over here, which is this big area of farmland here. And I would think, based just on natural barriers, that maybe this kingdom runs at least all the way along this coast. And there's probably something else going on in the center down here. Yo, what's up, Ham Hamwich? How's it going? We have what we believe is going to be a sunken city here that used to be part of a bridge that actually connected these two continents in ages long past. One of those classic, ancient civilizations that had more magical power than we do now type of D&D tropes. On this continent, we have kind of like a Great Lakes region up in the north. We have all these big lakes. That's very cool. And then the center of the continent is dominated by this sort of big desert blight area that we decided on. And we did a lot of work on that last time. So I really don't want to focus on it too much this time. I want to sort of branch out. But notable things about this zone are that we know that there is a sleeping shadow dragon or Draco Lich or something that when it was alive was a red dragon, or when it was whatever was a red dragon. And so it is slumbering, and it basically infects the whole land around it for, dozens of miles in any direction, probably hundreds of miles in any direction, with this like ominous cloud of ashy blight stuff. We know that there is like one little pitiful water source in this desert, and that there is like a camp right near it. You missed 2 letters that time. That there's like a camp near it. We know that the camp is home to these, what do we call them? Ash runners, I believe, that are mostly basically prisoners from this, that are operated by this sort of private prison / mining company called the Brightstone Mining Company. We know that that the creatures, monsters, whatever, that are exposed to this blight, if they survive, they are, sort of infected with this disease and also made kind of like powerful and rabid or whatever. We know that these ash runners use some sort of magical breathing apparatuses. We know that they go on these ash runs that are extremely dangerous. There's this kind of system where if they complete enough ash runs, they get their freedom. If they survive, we've just arbitrarily decided 5 ash runs, but we can change that for world building at any point. But oh no, it's if they compete, we think 10 ash runs, they get to be promoted out of the encampment, and they go back to the port town, which is this thing over here, and live kind of a life of relative luxury. If they survive 5 runs, they could choose to be promoted to warden instead, where they don't go on ash runs anymore, but they don't have an opportunity to get out, but they sort of turn into like cops, basically, right? Prison guards, and if they survive that for 10 years, they get to get out with a smaller severance, so it's like somehow safer, somehow not always. There are these black guards who are like humans born in the camp that have specially adapted to the blight, so that's kind of like they're kind of like a spice thing in Dune, like they're addicted to it. It gives them like some powers, but the disease has fused with them and they can't survive outside the Blightlands. because they need the presence of the bright blight to live. Um, it's they could, but like they'd have to bring a certain amount of it with them or find some means of doing that. Um, yeah. We know that it can be used to make some kind of crazy material that like the blight itself infects the very stones. And so we have this blight stone or this blight ore that everyone's after that makes some kind of crazy weapons and armor and materials and shit. We also think maybe it makes some sort of pigment, shimmer gloom dye and shimmer shade ink or something that's like very like black, but also kind of shiny in a way. Or maybe it's like Vanta black, it's just like the blackest black times infinity. I don't know. Anyway, the blight animals and monsters feed on the blight ore, we think. I just wrote down a bunch of names we talked about. Are they connected to the dragon in some metaphysical way? So that's kind of the stuff we know about the blight. Like I said, we know there's a lot more about that, so I don't really want to focus on it too hard. Because we've done a bunch of work there, and I want us to not get so zeroed in on like one zone, And then we think we have this like Great Lakes region, this fishing hub, and then we've got whatever this area of power is in the farmland directly near the Sunken City. So we also know there's a race of otters that live in the Ring of Fire archipelago. We decided that there were sentient otter people, and they live over here. So that's kind of what we got, folks. Where does anybody want to start working now?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say a couple of things. So I was on a little bit of the last stream with some of you, and the world building that collaboratively that we did was incredible. A lot of us had really great ideas, seemingly not having any trouble coming up with them. A lot of like really interesting, thoughts and concepts. I often hear people who come to me and they struggle, usually saying something like this: I have this great idea for a character, but I don't feel like I can do it because I'm just copying this other idea, this other character, whether it's a cartoon, an anime, a comic book, literature, a movie, doesn't matter. A B villain in a music video. I don't care where they're from. So I was thinking, and because I give this advice a lot, people have a hard time basically stealing ideas. They really like ideas. They admire them. They don't feel like they can use them. And I wanted to give some tips on that. And I thought this might be a great opportunity to maybe apply that in some way.
Fair enough. Well, I'll start off by saying I have already stolen things in this exact map that we're looking at.
We sure have. I think I recognized a few things. I might have even suggested we steal them.
Perhaps. So, 100%, the big mountain with the blight and shit, that's Morrowind. That's Vardenfell. That's Morrowind. I just ripped that shit. That is Red Mountain, 100%, right? It is absolutely just Red Mountain in Morrowind and the whole blight area and all that shit. But we've taken that sort of concept of a mountain that spews out some sort of disease-ridden dust storm, right? That much of it is Morrowind. Everything else is not, right? To go back to it, we started with that premise. We kind of tweaked a few things about it. It's because of a dragon down there, and not because of Dagoth or whatever, right? And then we just started doing that thing. We asked ourselves, what must be true? Well, if there's all this, ash and storm, and it's all infected with necromantic energy, then everything must be disease, and it blots out the sun, and so then we just picked another thing. If this is going to be a wasteland or not, we decided it's not going to be a wasteland. Well, then, like, in the sense that there's people there, Well, then there must be a really damn good reason for the people to be there, right? No one's going to go live there for no reason, right? If you'd have to be really important shit there for people to put up with the rest of it, you know what I mean? So we just sort of followed that train on down.
Is awesome. That's my also personal favorite world building approach, which is here's a cool thing. What else must be true? If this thing is true about my world, then let's basically work backwards.
Let's extrapolate, yeah.
And sometimes I think people might get bogged down in the question asking, like, well, what is true? Well, how am I supposed to know what's true? What is truth? And then it kind of spirals. I think some of us have been there before. So I'd like to offer some tips on letting go and
Sure.
taking inspiration from other sources and quite literally stealing ideas.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say was Red Mountain was not the only thing we stole in this part of the map. Just 2 blocks away from Red Mountain, I stole this little idea for a really gross, sludgy, fucked up body of water in a desert from the Belgariad. There's a little spot in Cathal Murgos known as the Tarn of Cathok. And I stole that shit. This little blip of water in the desert basically is that. So anyway, continue. I just wanted to get those both in there because it exemplifies the fact that, like, if your references are obscure enough, no one will know what you're stealing from. And then they therefore will not think that you stole it and will think you're a genius when in fact you're a thief instead.
And this doesn't just apply to world building either. Or I guess I want to say map making, because that's really what we're talking about right now. We're talking about designing a map for a setting for fantasy roleplay. But what about all the other parts? What about your character?
Right.
What about NPCs? What about magical items or bad guys? You can steal all of those things. And if they're obscure enough, they sound awesome, you don't have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Because no one will catch on, or if they do, you get to smile and share a secret with someone.
Right. Yeah, if you're playing with shitty people who you should stop playing with and don't want to be friends with, or you should maybe have a conversation with before you do that, they will just like call out, oh my god, that's this from that thing, in a way that will ruin it for everyone. Right? Sometimes you do that and everyone laughs about it. It's like, oh, you just ripped that off from Final Fantasy VII and we all have a giggle. Those are great. Those are fine. No, that's not a... But there are certain people who will be like, no, this sucks. You just stole that from Final Fantasy VII. And you're like, well... And no one else knew it, And those people, stop playing. Either tell them that that's lame or stop playing with them.
Right.
But, good players will just sort of like let themselves be in on the secret. You know what I mean? For the most part. And they won't try to ruin everyone else's fun by pointing out all the shit you're ripping off.
And I think even with things, I think with things like The Lord of the Rings, for instance, I think The Lord of the Rings, the film trilogy, has been so heavily ingrained in sort of the modern fantasy aesthetic because of how well done it was, that I think we have, a lot of us, a baseline in stuff like that, where yes, it might seem like low-hanging fruit, but it's actually more like a common vocabulary.
Right.
And we shouldn't be afraid of using that.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that goes without saying is if your players are pretty new, there are no cliches. That's another thing I stole from Matt Colville, which is that, like, if your players are playing D&D for the first time, maybe they've seen it in movies, maybe they've read it in books, but they've never got to experience it in the way you get to experience things when you are being a player character, right? You're way more, like, invested, and you're way more, like, personally identified, almost in the same way as when you're playing a video game, but in some ways even more intense. So don't let yourself be afraid to, like, use some cliches, because to your players, they may really not be cliches. If you've run, multiple, like if you're in a situation where you've run campaigns, but you're branching off into trying to homebrew stuff before, and you've always run adventures out of books, don't be afraid to use cliches.
Absolutely.
Okay, so from all of those sort of bits of practical advice, a small pink plasmoid that eats things and gains their power. Yes. All right. So where does Kirby live, guys?
I love. He's obviously the god emperor of the
Yeah,
breadbasket
he is.
because he eats things. He needs a
Mm.
lot of food. Where else would he be?
Here's a thought. Maybe he lives in the Great Lakes region, and he only eats fish and gains fish powers, so he's both Kirby and Aquaman at the same time. That's another thing I've done to great effect, though. I will say sometimes you can take two ideas and mash them together, or two or three ideas and mash them together, and make something that's greater than the sum of the parts. I've told this story before, but I have a D&D character that actually He Who Waits and Beast have both played with this character, who is a bard slash warlock, who is basically a mashup of The Devil Went Down to Georgia, um, The Music Man, and Oliver Twist. That is literally
Right.
what this guy is. And when I tell you that, you're like, oh shit, that fucking makes sense, right? He's got a Mr. Fagin figure, but he's like a scammer that like rolls into town, but also he beat a devil in a fiddle contest. Like, and that's just, and he's a D&D character now, right? So don't be afraid to take like, ooh, what if we took Kirby and Aquaman and sort of, and we made this like whale creature that eats other fish and gains their fish powers or something. You know, I don't know. You can do all kinds of stuff, guys. All right.
And sometimes if you think one cliche is too weak, double down and
Yeah.
keep adding cliches.
Cthulhu Kirby. Yes, Cthulhu Kirby. You get it. Okay.
That's basically like an aboleth.
Yeah. Oh, kind of. Yeah, actually. So really we're describing like a dire aboleth that has
It's
like
pink.
absorption power, where Cinda's pink. Okay, guys.
Final
Well,
boss.
what do we want to work on? We can do new stuff. We don't have, we've got a few seeds already planted that we can jump on. We have the archipelagos with the otter people. We have this breadbasket. We have this sunken city. We have, this mountain area that we're kind of avoiding with the volcano because we don't want to work on it. We've got the Great Lakes region. We got the frozen wastes of the north and the south. We also know that there's no. I think this is maybe only one half of the globe, and I think there's maybe stuff on the other side of it. So I think there's currently no way without crossing land to get to this archipelago from this place over here. Like if you're on the eastern land, if you went west, you'd hit the archipelago eventually, but I think you'd find other stuff on the other part of the world first, in my opinion. So we have this like uber continent that stretches from the ice caps to the ice caps. I think that makes some interesting sort of barriers in this map. So, and we could even we can terraform, we can make another little landmass over here to sort of bring into play. We can do a lot of stuff. Another thing we can consider is our central tension, if we can think of one. A lot of good gaps for smaller kingdoms, yeah. So I don't know.
Do we want to maybe work on some ancillary cultures? Maybe some of the other factions that are in the world.
Let's see what chat wants to do.
Yeah, but I don't want to drive this train. I'm here for y'all.
But if the train doesn't move, we will press go eventually. So.
Yeah, chugga choo choo, guys.
How many total factions? No idea.
Ooh, let's.
Yeah, totally.
We don't have to determine that. We can just start small. Maybe like we could just start with one, and if that's fun, then we can keep.
Yeah. Well, here's a thought. Here's a thought. Why don't we start trying to think about the central tension of our setting? That is a sort of Matt Colville thing. If you've noticed, I steal a lot from that dude.
Yeah, I can explain that if you want, Pixel.
Yeah, talk about the central tension.
Yeah, so this completely changed how I think about conflict on a grand scale. And like Pixel said, Matt Colville has a video in his Running the Game series on YouTube, which is invaluable to DMs. It talks a lot, not necessarily about the mechanics of D&D, but more about the philosophy of how to understand the game, the experience that you're attempting to offer the players, and the philosophy of your world, essentially. And one of those ideas is that we tend to think of peace as being the status quo, and that something disrupts that and causes friction and war and conflict to arise. But if you examine history from a materialist perspective, it's actually more on the opposite end of that. Peace tends to be the consequence of the status quo, which is conflict. We are constantly competing for space, resources, ideology, many reasons, both materialist and non-materialist, and that we only gain peace when we put effort into it. You actually have to work to establish peace, and so the central tension is the thing that people are working against in order to enforce a peace, or it's the thing that makes peace impossible.
Yeah. And the central tension, you can kind of think of it as an axis upon which different factions and individuals can sort of align themselves. It can be grand and philosophical, like order versus chaos. It could be something like the Empire versus the Republic. Definitely something to do with dragons. Okay, so we're wanting to do with some dragons here, and we'll get to that stuff in a second here, guys. Once we kind of, maybe our central tension has to do with dragons. I don't know. Maybe it's dragons and giants. We'll talk about that. Okay, so maybe that's an idea, because I know that's a thing that's kind of a common D&D trope, and maybe that could be fun.
Classic, yeah. Titans
and dragons, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, so the central tension is this kind of philosophical, political, or metaphysical or physical axis across which you sort of arrange the different factions of your setting, right? And whether or not they're at peace or whether or not they're at war, all those kinds of things, you know? And again, there are examples that Matt Colville gives in his video. One of them is like the Cold War. You have like two superpowers, you know? And you can think of that sort of central tension a lot of different ways. You could set your adventure in one of the superpowers and you work for or against one of the superpowers, whatever. You also could set it in one of the smaller satellite factions that is like ancillary to these massive superpowers, right? But nevertheless has to deal with their bullshit, right? You could do something like the in this case, right? That might be the central tension of the dragons versus the giants, being like these two sort of superpowers in the world who are in conflict with one another, and every other faction in this world they don't even necessarily have to align themselves with one side or the other necessarily, but they just have to be oriented with that tension some way or another, right? They have to deal with that bullshit, right? And I think that's kind of a good way to think of it. It's like, it's not necessarily, you know, because like certain people can be for or against or neutral and they can all think it's stupid or whatever, but it's like everyone's got an opinion about this. And once you have this central tension, it helps you create a more politically sophisticated set of factions, because you can give them this kind of, that's a good idea.
Motivation, essentially.
Yeah, you can give them this kind of like, every faction that you make, you get to ask the question, okay, how do they stand on all of this? What's their relationship to this central tension? And then it makes them all feel super real and the world feels super lived in, because every faction that the players come into is going to like have motivations and do things that are predicated on logical responses given their like orientation to this central tension. And it makes it feel super realistic to the players. So, okay. So let's take some ideas from chat, because we've had some good ones while we've been prattling about the villains.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of interesting stuff. Chat, it wants to do some stuff with dragons, Dragonborn, establishing their role or culture in the world,
Mhm.
maybe even a settlement of some kind. There's some interesting dragons versus these oceanic central tension, kind of like a sky versus sea
Mhm.
um, friction, which I think is
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah.
When you world build, when you make maps like this, a lot of times there's a ton of water, and not very often do you actually go around get
Mhm.
around to making that water on the map meaningful.
Right.
And this is a good way, I think, for us to brainstorm some ways that we
Yeah.
can. Obviously, the volcanic archipelagos that's a super interesting feature. And we have these race of otter people that are likely they're kind of like a bridge between the land and sea, but I
Right.
think that they're probably more allied towards these aquatic underlords.
Yeah.
The nightmare Kirby that we described, I'm sure, has something to do in the mix.
Yeah.
We also have some interesting stuff about if Titans were essentially guardian uh, entities. These
Mhm.
sacred beasts is the phrase that he who waits use. An excellent phrase. Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some sort of like regional protectors or guardians. That's something that's very common
Mhm.
in mythology.
Yep.
Um, the first one that jumps to my mind, a classic example is Umbaba from the Gilgamesh epic,
Mm. I was
who
thinking
guards the
about
cedar
I was thinking
forest.
about Zelda myself.
No, and that's two excellent places to get stuff to steal. This is
Exactly.
exactly why we're having this talk.
Yep.
If you play a video game, you have fought a boss. You know what a boss looks like. You know what a mini boss looks like. You know what mobs look like. Steal those.
Yeah.
Those can all exist in your D&D
Um
game.
okay, so hang on. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys cuz I feel like you probably can't see it on stream. So we're going to there we go. Now we can read this shit. Ripped it from Mage Bash. That would help the spiritual loose.
Hmm.
Okay, so a couple of things we can consider. I love this idea of the dragons versus like whatever's in charge underneath the ocean. Um, I think we're in that stage of world building where we have some questions to answer, and this isn't a what must be true. This is a sort of branching like pick something interesting brand. And I guess and maybe that's a way I hadn't really thought about this until just this moment, but maybe that's a pretty good way to conceive of like my philosophy of world building is if you don't have any what must be true questions to answer, it means that you're at a point when you should be thinking of, okay, what's a cool branch I can go down? What's a cool thing I can pick and decide this is this way because I think it's cool. And then once I have one of those, I start asking the what must be true until I kind of get to a dead end or get bogged down or feel like I've gone down that road enough. And then I just pick another thing and say, okay, time to pick another cool thing I'm excited about, right? So I'm excited about this idea of these dragons and the ocean thing. That leads us to some questions, right? We have this sort of theme of like the sky versus the sea in this kind of macro way. That leads me to immediately wonder how do the elemental planes in general come into play? Which leads me then to our cosmology. Do we have elemental planes in the same way that we usually do in D&D? Like once we start asking those kind of elementals, titans questions, right? Because we strayed a little bit away from giants, although giants also play into that. But so like, what is that cosmology? Do we want to stick with the standard like Great Wheel cosmology, which is totally fine for any given D&D setting? Players are comfortable with that. That's all fine and good. Or do we want to go off book and kind of do our own thing, which may lead to some more work for us later on? But we have the opportunity to do something different and cool. So I like the sacred beasts idea. Um, but I think we asked the question like, how do these things kind of relate to each other?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to when you hit these kind of tangents to take a second and note it down like, okay, I have decisions to make.
Mm-hmm.
There are branching paths. And when you make a decision, a lot of times it simplifies the next decisions because you've kind of cut out a lot of the fluff.
Right. It's as a creative person, like one of the more terrifying things is just sitting there staring at the blank page, right? And you feel like you have these endless possibilities, but like it's so hard to just zero in on what you want to do. The trick in that scenario is make the first decision. Box yourself in a little bit. Give yourself a wall somewhere, and then you
something
start
to lean up against.
Yeah. Then you start to be able to extrapolate from that one decision, and it is those constraints that you put on yourself can help lead you in the fruitful directions, whereas sometimes just staring at the endless possibilities of the blank page can be super overwhelming, especially for a lot of us folks who have anxiety and perfectionism problems. So Gift of Gabby, welcome in. How are we doing? We're doing well. We are doing well. We are building a fantasy Dungeons and Dragons world together. It may be a promise from a creator to aid the people from a threat. That's a possibility. That implies a creator, which is cool. That's definitely a route we can go.
And in terms of I want to touch on this actually because this is something that I've been researching a ton lately. Creation myths. Creation myths are an incredibly useful, immensely powerful, super descriptive resource that is 100% free, stealable, completely uncopyrightable, and can be so obscure that no one has ever read it or heard of it in your immediate circle, and you come off sounding like an absolute genius, which is how I fool all of you. I read a ton of these creation myths. Wikipedia, bro. You get on there and you can look up a dozen and a half origin stories from around the world of how people interpreted their own existence. And then you can steal that because guess what? These concepts are really dense and they kind of existential thought is really crunchy for our brains. We're not meant to think about our own existence constantly.
I'm sorry, wait, we're not?
Warning bells in our lizard brains, which is why it's easier to just steal someone's hard work from 3,500 years ago who wrote it all down in cuneiform on a clay tablet for you. It's already done. Just take what they've done. Build on the backs of your ancestors.
Yeah. So yeah. That sounds super fun, Gift of Gabby. So we have these questions, right? What's the cosmology like? How do the elemental planes come into play? I had a thought. So we had a suggestion that is not necessarily mutually exclusive. A promise from a creator to aid the people from a threat. I am wondering what if, because it's D&D, right? So we're gonna have the typical sky giants or fire giants, stone giants, whatever, right? Generally speaking. I don't know that there's really water giants, are there?
Oh yeah. Oh goodness.
In D&D? Hang on.
I mean, no, probably not. Well, maybe.
Let's find out. Here's another thing you can do is look for ways to find shit in the monster manual that's cool and ask yourself, where does this live in my setting?
Oh gosh. So I run a very strange game. My table is a little funky because I'm also quite strange.
Storm giants.
Giants. I homebrew all of my monsters because I also let people basically bring broken characters to my game.
Bet you frost giants are the water variety. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No. So this is what I do a lot of the time when I have a concept for a monster. Or if I know that it exists in D&D, but I would like it to be flavored differently for my campaign setting, the Beast Wilds, you can find a comparable thing. Just because there are no water giants, we can take something like a frost or even a storm giant, and then we can say, guess what? It has a swimming speed. It can breathe underwater. Maybe what we do is we find another aquatic creature, like a mermaid, and we copy some of those abilities, and we mishmash a giant and a mermaid, and boom, we now have a race of giants.
Yeah. So one of the things the thing I was about to suggest when I went on my water giant tangent was, what if the like storm giants and the cloud giants, those like air giants, what if those fuckers are dead? What if they gone and the dragons killed them all? Right? And because it says to me this like dragons are air and fire, right? I mean, you have all the other elemental or types of dragons. You've got your lightning dragons, you've got your poison, and your chromatics, whatever. But like, what if there's like dragons are like air and fire, and the giants that are left are like stone and water, right? And you have almost this tension of like the unstoppable force and the immovable object, right? And like, what if that's sort of the deal in this setting? Is that like
elemental balance?
Yeah, and I think what I kind of like the idea is that the dragons are like a calamity unleashed upon the world, and they wiped out the sky protectors and kind of took their place. And so now all that's left are like the air and the water and the stone protectors in a way, right? And maybe that's why the sky over Red Mountain is fucked, or Black Blight Mountain, whatever the fuck we called it, right? Is because the sky protectors aren't there to like cleanse it or whatever, right? I don't know.
Right.
It ties into something we've already done. So what do you guys think? What do we think of that? It kind of gives us this opportunity to do the giants. What if the giants are like druidic in a way? The like I like the sacred beasts idea. What if they're like shapeshifters and they turn into like giant fucking animals, but also they're giants?
Ooh, what if the sacred beasts themselves are, these totem beasts, these iconographic representations of guardians, but the druids who worship them somehow have the ability to turn into them, or at least maybe a head druid who is anointed in some specific way can become this guardian in times of need.
Okay, sorry, say that again for me. I was trying to type down my sky protector shit so I didn't lose the thought. That's another thing with world building. Write the ideas down, like right when you have them, or they'll be gone forever. Okay, so...
Yeah, because you'll have 1.5 million ideas, or you'll have none all at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so the giants are druidic. What else?
I was thinking that, so these sacred beasts, that these iconic entities, these guardian animals that we're identifying for these different locations or different, groups of people, however they're assigned or organized. I feel like it could be an interesting power that we give these cultures or their worshippers, that a druid or some of the druids have the ability to shapeshift into these using their druidic, what's it called? Where they turn into animals.
Yeah.
Wild shape.
Yeah, I like that. That's super dope. One of the things that makes me think of is a setting that I worked on with Vincent Page and our friend Tyler back when we were running a homebrew D&D campaign, where and one of the things I think we did really, really well with that world was our Pantheon, right? And so what if instead of, because basically what we did is we said, hey, what if we steal the Chinese zodiac, basically, except change all the animals and do this thing of these like cyclical years, and they're all associated with an animal that is sort of the representational avatar of a deity. So we had like the year of the ox, and the ox is about order and is about like farming and roads and, like hard work and shit like that. And then you had like the year of the owl, and the owl was about like knowledge and learning. And, you had the year of the cat, and the cat was, the thief king. And you had the year of the ram.
Here's what y'all need to do. You need to go to your local Chinese spot, and you need to take the placemat with you so that you can scribble on it and replace all the animals with different animals.
Yeah, basically. And then we had, you had the year of the year of the ram, and the ram was the tempest. And so, that sort of combined two things, right? Which is the stealing from the real world, kind of taking inspiration from stuff, and also making, if you're making a pantheon, make a god for each cleric domain is one way to do
Right.
it, and that gives you just a real set, like, easy way to do this stuff. But it's just like the pantheon was super evocative and fun. We had like a dead god, who had tried to betray like the creator king, and was therefore summarily killed. And so there used to be more years in the zodiac than there were now. I'm not suggesting we do that with this, but I do like the idea of taking these sacred beasts and doing, like, rather than maybe having traditional gods in the D&D sense, maybe everything's tied to these sacred beasts in a way, or maybe the gods are further removed from things and the sacred beasts are like the normal way that people interface with divine power is more through these sacred beasts than it is through, you know, chapels and churches and cathedrals. I don't know.
Yeah, I think in that way you open up an interesting world where druids and clerics can actually worship the same faith.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe non-traditional pantheon using the sacred beasts instead of usual D&D gods, right? Um okay. So I think then in our elemental planes, how do the elemental planes come into play? I think the planes of air and fire are dominated by dragonkin in our setting, maybe. The planes of water and earth are dominated by giantkin in our setting, maybe. I'm negotiable on those, but I think that's kind of a cool way to, like, metaphysically extrapolate this central tension out into the cosmology a little bit.
And here's another tip too. Uh, Work in small numbers. Um, it what I mean by that is when you give yourself restrictions, or when you enumerate a number of things or categories of things that you're trying to decide on, make the sizes of those decision pools small. Try not to really go above like five, because you're gonna struggle. You're gonna bog yourself down with decisions. If you say, "Oh, I found this beautiful stained glass window that has 37 panels on it, and I want to use it to represent my pantheon, so I'm gonna give myself 37 slots to fill." You're gonna burn out.
Yeah. Yeah, 5 is a good number. Definitely try not to go above 10. Um,
And this doesn't just,
yeah.
like number of gods, number of cities, number of
Mhm.
factions. Anytime you're working on something, just work on like five or less at a time, because
Right.
you just won't get anything done if you're making too many decisions across too many like
Yeah.
lines of thought.
Yep. Okay. And I've talked about these planes of air and water and earth and fire. That assumes sort of a great wheel cosmology to some extent, but if we don't have traditional deities, maybe that's all there is. Maybe we don't really have a heaven and hell. Maybe we have like a reincarnative cycle. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, guys, but like, what are our thoughts on that?
Are there ghosts? It's
I
a
I don't know.
incredibly important question to ask yourself about your world. Are there ghosts? Because as soon as you decide whether or not there
Could
are
I go?
ghosts,
Hang on. Could I go help my mom real quick? I can. Beast, if you want to just keep talking, and
oh
we'll.
sure,
Yeah,
let's
I'll go
talk
help her.
about ghosts. Let's get spooky, y'all. While Pixel is a dutiful son. So, let's talk about ghosts, folks. And I can see the chat, but I don't have all of Pixel's screens, so I'm just going to be a talking head until he comes back. Uh, when you have ghosts, you have an afterlife of sorts. And afterlife is not meant to immediately imply any specific situation. because it's your world and you get to make that decision. But let's just think about the way that you and I in the real world probably think about ghosts, if we think about them at all, is that they are these spirits of people
Okay.
like you and me who have passed on, who linger still for some reason, whether they are being held here
Okay.
or by themselves or other extraneous forces. If you have ghosts, why are they ghosts? Are they an aberration? Is that just what happens when people die? Is your entire world chock full of the dead spirits of everything that has ever lived? If there
Okay.
aren't ghosts, why aren't there ghosts? Actually, that's easier. You don't even have to ask that question. If
Yeah.
there aren't ghosts, you can just say, sorry, no ghosts.
Yeah. Right. Well, I guess, but it does beg the question: if there aren't ghosts, are there souls? If there's souls
Right.
and no ghosts, then it just means that souls don't become ghosts and you just have no ghosts. But it still means the souls go somewhere. But if there's no souls, then there's
And,
nowhere.
and
Then you don't need to think of where the souls go.
I actually want to use an example from actual human history. The oldest example of ghosts that we have in recorded human history is from ancient Mesopotamia in Babylon. There is a tablet depicting uh, the grandfather of someone, and they are uh, drawn in a way that is unnatural, and the tablet clearly indicates that this is the depiction of a form of exorcism to remove his ghost because he refused to leave after dying, which means human beings have believed in ghosts and souls and the afterlife in some form for thousands upon thousands of years, and believing in ghosts is as intrinsically human as thinking and breathing and speech and all other things that we do.
Yeah, which just goes to show you that we're real good at being wrong. No, I'm just fucking with you. So,
But boy, do we tell some great stories.
sure do. We sure do. Okay. So, yeah, we have this question. Are there ghosts? Are there undead? Are there souls? What happens to souls if they... did I get raided by somebody? There's like way more people in here than there were just a minute ago. Bearded Wonder, welcome in, friendo. Thanks for popping in. Love the world building. Middle of building one yourself. Hell yeah. Okay, so we had a suggestion from He Who Waits that maybe the dragons eat magic and that we think there should be undead. I love the idea for this one of doing kind of a more non-traditional pantheon. I think there should be, I don't know, I'm going to say 3, 4, or 8 sacred beasts. I don't know exactly. We'll see when we get in there. You know, how many we want to think we should come up with. I like this idea of these, the giants are like druidic, the dragons are a calamity. If the dragons are a calamity that killed the giants, and it implies that there used to be kinds of giants that there aren't now, which we don't have to go with that if people don't like it, but that's what I kind of thought would be cool. That means the dragons came here from somewhere or were created from something. So, like, there's a question of what must be true we can ask is, okay, we have this cool idea of what if the dragons killed the sky and the fire giants, right? And took over their, like, domains, but are not the same kind of helpful protectors that the giants were in this theoretical scenario I'm crafting. All of which could be changed if chat wills it. But it seems cool and evocative. But that brings the question: okay, so then where did the dragons come from? Right? Are they alien in the sense that they're from, you know, some outer world or other dimension? Were there always dragons, but something happened that made them more powerful? Like, we have a lot of different ways we could go with this. So first of all, what are you guys' thoughts? Do you like that idea of, you know, that being how this works? You know, that the dragons were a calamity and they either arrived in the plane or became powerful enough to kill the giants. And then if so, what's the answer to that question? How did they get here and what happened?
And I'd like to touch on this as this is interesting because your world exists, right? All of our settings tend to exist in a temporal sense and have existed, which means they have a history. So every world should have, you should be able to ask yourself what just happened, so that when you drop your characters into a world, it is a world in motion.
Yes. Very good. He Who Waits. So, Bearded Wonder says, I've always liked the idea of dragons coming from a plane shift. That could be very cool.
Excellent.
And He Who Waits says, maybe the dragons are made from negative emotions released from the spirits of people.
Dragons.
That's where ghosts go. I almost wonder, what if it's the advent of people that causes this, like sapient races, not sentient, but sapient.
Humanity is historically the cause of most bad things.
All the suffering, right? But what if the like suffering and pain and negative emotions? What if it like corrupted some of the sacred beasts who became dragons instead, and like then sired or fathered and mothered whatever this race, species of dragons that went on to kill the druids, who were like the followers of the sacred beasts, kind of, and they're like protectors, right? And then so what if what we have is like we don't have gods and devils, but we have these sacred beasts, and like some of them, one or two of them got corrupted by the negative emotion of humanity. And what if we have maybe like this reincarnative cycle where like when beings die, like their energy returns to the sacred beasts who like release it out into the world again to be more life or something. I don't know. And then because of the negativity of the experiences of humans, some of the beasts got corrupted or something.
Well, if the sacred beasts are a focal point of worship, then it stands to reason that they could actually be influenced by their worshippers. So maybe it is the advent of or influx of new worshippers who essentially corrupt the sacred beasts into dragons.
Yeah, that's a way we could do it.
He Who Waits says in Viking lore, greedy people became dragons. That's interesting. One of my favorite dragon stories is from the Danish epic Beowulf. And it's a part that most people don't read. It's actually an appendix. It's when Beowulf himself is retired happily as a beekeeper. Unfortunately, a nearby town where he has just outside of made his little beekeeping retirement home comes to him for aid, knowing he is a retired great adventurer, and says, "Hey, there's a cave nearby. There's a dragon. It's really bad. He keeps coming out and eating our folk. You're a great adventurer. Can you do something about it?" He looks around and he says, "Man, I got this whole beekeeping thing going on. I was really kicking back. But I'm a hero, and yes, I will." He goes. Unfortunately, he's old. The dragon kills him. But his bees, who love him very much, come to his aid, and they sting out the eyes of that dragon, who, in a fury, crushes the ceiling of his cave, which collapses upon him, killing the dragon, and burying Beowulf in an entire cave filled with treasure.
The end, and they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think one of the sacred beasts that gets corrupted is a salamander. And in the sense that it's a fire-breathing salamander. What if the other one was like
absolutely
in the vein of the story? What if the other one was a bee, a poisonous bee?
Absolutely.
And so we have like the air and the fire kind of thing going on. We're like a wasp / bee / insect. I don't know.
It could almost be like a dragonfly type creature.
Yeah. And this is like an air sacred beast. And I don't think there's only 4. I want the idea that there's like more. I feel like there should be more than just 4. Like a fire, water, earth, air thing seems really overdone, but I don't know. Maybe we just roll with it. But that to me would explain why now, because we have like the fire and the air, and that's the dragon's domain for the most part, right? And so I like that idea that these guys get corrupted. I think maybe they get corrupted by a large storming eagle of storms turned into a dragon. We could do eagle instead.
Well, scales or feathers rather are just fractured scales.
And we don't have to just have 2, although I like the idea of like a father-mother thing. I like the idea of like a poisonous insect because that gets us to like green dragons and the poison breath. But the lightning-breathing storm eagle is also a great idea. And we could do a Quetzalcoatl. Okay, I see you typing there. So we do, but okay. So let's take a poll from chat because I'm kind of throwing a lot of stuff out here right now. We have these dragons versus. We started with Ocean Deep Lords, but also Ocean and Stone ? Right, because we have this air and this stone thing. Sky versus sea and land. I don't know how that plays in. We have maybe some elemental planes. Maybe they're more spiritual or metaphysical. We don't know yet. TBD on the cosmology. We have sacred beasts. Super, super pumped about those. They are taking the place of gods. 4 elements at the core. Beneath them could be a beast for each region. Thinking Magic the Gathering type regions. Yeah. I'm also wondering what if we did sacred beasts for like maybe like secondary sacred beasts that are like combinations of the different things. So like you have like a pure fire, right? But fire plus water equals like storms or mist or clouds, right? You have like a pure air, but air plus, water equals like fog, or lightning, or maybe air plus fire equals lightning, right? And air plus water equals like mist, And what if there were sacred beasts for like those? That would give us 8, and it would kind of give us this like slightly more complex.
You know what
I don't
this
know.
actually makes me think of, just so that I can spit out some references that people can grab onto to steal from.
Okay.
This makes me think of Mega Man.
Okay. Yeah.
You know when you load up the old school like classic Mega Man and you got to choose which boss you wanted to fight, and there's the fire guy, electric guy, like and there's like 8 of them right there, and they're typically elementally focused. So that's a good way to again, video games, anything that you can take and adapt is going to mean less work, and it's going to be sharper and more focused and take less time.
Yeah. A says a beast for each region, but each region has a beast. So looking at our map,
It sure does.
4 greater, 4 lesser could be the combos. Yeah. Looking at our map, we have basically 3 regions, right? We have Archipelago, which I think we should probably add some more islands over here in general. Make some island chains a little more obvious. We have this Western continent, and we have this Eastern continent, right? So if we go that route, we're looking at like 12 minimum beasts. That's a lot. I like the idea of doing it regionally. If each region has one of each, right? Now, maybe they don't. I think that, if we go like regional, I think each region maybe gets 1 or 2, and they just kind of have what they have. I don't know.
I think the best way to approach things like this, because what I feel like we're getting into is one of those moments where we're getting overwhelmed with decisions.
Yeah.
I think the best thing to do is to pick one of the locations that we've already worked on, like the Ash Place or the Seat of Power bread basket, and maybe say, let's figure out what's happening here.
Yeah, I actually had the same thought, which was, hey guys, I guess we know where the dragon that lives in Red Mountain came from. That motherfucker used to be the sacred beast.
Right.
Right? That used to be the fire sacred beast. The salamander that made that shit a desert in the first place lived in that mountain, right? And now that motherfucker is a sacred beast. Or now that sacred beast got corrupted and turned into a dragon and is spewing out like poison and fire upon the land, right? Ash, basically. What do we think? How's that hitting for folks at home?
So Ace wanted to clarify. He was thinking more in terms of like biomes. Specific.
Biomes, okay.
So there would be a swamp one and a mountain one
yeah,
and an island one. So that could be interesting because then you're categorizing your world based on its natural features rather than sort of proximity.
Right. So yeah, I think the salamander then would be volcanoes, yeah?
Oh, def.
Right?
There's a couple of good ones. Well, does that mean the otters then worship the dragons?
I don't know. Maybe no. What if the otters worship? I still like the idea of them being connected to the ocean deep lords, but what if that's because the ocean deep lords protect them from the dragons? When the salamanders began to like become dragons, what if the water giants, the underwater giants, like helped kind of fight them off, so that maybe it's like some of the volcanoes are maybe there's two factions of the otter people, some of whom are under the dominion of the dragons and some of whom are not. I don't know. Could have been the greed of the followers for glimmer or the ore that the ash runners go for. So he who waits, the only thing with that is kind of a chicken and egg situation of the glimmer and the ash running are a consequence of the salamander being turned into a dragon.
Well, that's what we decided on the last stream, but obviously this is the kind of thing where like if it's your world, you can undo. Yeah, if you stumble onto something like that, because this will happen where you're building a world and you're actually going back to re-examine your past choices. You can undo past choices. You can retcon. Don't feel like you're setting yourself up, locking everything in stone.
Yeah, that is fair. Okay, so let's do some work. I think we're in a moment where let's do some work on the sacred beasts. And I actually say let's think about Ace's idea about making them terrain like biome based. So we've got volcanoes. I think mountains should maybe be separate from volcanoes because or that the volcanoes we talked about like the interstitial ones, right? So fire and earth is volcano. Maybe we can go that route. So we've got like air, fire, earth, water, right? Kind of thing. And between air and fire is lava. Right? And then between air and fire is lightning. Sorry. Between fire and earth is lava. Between earth and water is mud. And between water and air.
Maybe instead of mud, a more elegant thing is clay.
Clay. Okay. And this is mist or clouds. Okay, what combinations have we not tried? Air and fire, air and earth. Are there any combinations of air and earth? I feel like those are so opposite. Air and earth could be poison.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay,
Or maybe even like sand.
maybe. Okay, so that's
I like
air.
poison better.
We did air and fire is lightning. Air and water is mist and clouds. Air and earth is maybe poison, maybe sand. That leaves then fire and earth is lava. Fire and water would be mist again, right? So I don't know how we deal with that. I mean, it's steam more than mist. Those are theoretically a little different, but not so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe instead of mist, it's like cloud or something.
yeah. Or we could just not do opposing elements like that. Like if we say, okay, we don't do air to earth and we don't do fire to water, but we do air to fire and air to water, and we do fire to earth and fire to water, and we do earth, to water and earth to fire. Like that would give us six. No, how many combos would that give us? The four main ones, right?
What was that?
Okay, Okay, air, fire, earth, water, air plus fire. So in a sense,
Well,
cardinal
what
directions,
air
the
air
opposites
water
never
could also
interact.
be ice.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so it's cardinal directions. Yeah. I like that, Ace. Thank you. If you rapidly heat something up cold, it explodes. That's true. So we got air plus fire, air plus water, right? And then we have earth plus fire and earth plus water. Does that give us 8? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that should be all the combos, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
As far as I
So
can tell,
then.
yeah.
Okay, and let's maybe come up with biomes for each one of these, right? So Earth plus Fire is volcano. Earth by itself is mountain, I think, maybe. Water, that's pretty straightforward. Ocean, lake, etc. Water plus Earth, I think maybe we go swamp for that. What do we think?
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Air, I think air is just the sky. I don't think it's not really a biome, right? But maybe air plus water is islands. I mean, that's still Earth,
Well,
but
actually, fire and water kind of makes the islands.
yeah. Okay, what other biomes? I mean, there's like grasslands would just be Earth, right? Um, let's see. I think this biome thing becomes a little tricky when we start to look at some of these. Tundra. Yeah, air and water could be tundra.
Yeah.
Air and fire could be like desert and plains. Yep, I like desert. Lurking while playing Fall Guys with bonus mom, but this looks so cool. Well, hell yeah, Lexicon. So we've got sky, we've got mountains, grasslands. We're gonna need something for these islands, though. Maybe Earth and Fire is volcano and islands.
That would make sense.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it is the volcano, then that's where the
islands come from. Yeah, right.
Right.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have at least one thing for each thing. And what that can help us do is think of like seats of power for the various different, kind of sacred beasts. Okay, so with that in mind, we have salamanders being kind of earth and fire, right? For volcanoes. and we have the eagle being uh, air and fire, kind of. And then so it's desert. Yeah, desert eagle. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So then for like the non-corrupted ones, we could have we need purely sky ones. We need we don't have pure fire. That one we did not give a
Maybe
thing to.
then maybe the volcanoes then should be pure fire, and then
And
maybe fire. What is it? Fire Earth or Earth
Yeah.
fire is the volcano or the islands? Right.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so these are not earth fire. The salamanders are pure fire. Okay. And eagles are air fire. We've got pure air. Let's do our pure ones first. These are, I think we think of these as like prime and secondary in a way, right? So the salamander is our prime, like fire being, right? What should be our water being? Turtle, earth. Okay. I feel like turtle should be earth, water. Yeah.
Yeah. Good old swamp snapping turtle.
We're basically turning this into Pokemon right now.
Yeah, more or less. It's great.
Yeah.
Use what you know, people.
Yeah.
Steal. You have our permission to take all of your experiences and your favorite concepts and media, and you can adapt them by simply changing the names.
That is very, very true. Okay. That could be interesting then, because if the salamander is what got corrupted, it would have an impact on fire, earth, and fire air regions. You could always go with a fish, but I feel like something else would be more fun. Yeah, I mean, so thinking about our pure water creature, we've got fish, we've got octopus, we've got squid, we've got sharks, we've got whales, we've got dolphins, we've got jellyfish. I don't know, anything leaping out under the crabs. We do have crab. Crab's a choice.
Crab is an excellent choice. Crab is
although crab could also be an
choice.
island choice. Earth, fire, crab. Although it's weird that islands aren't related to water at all. But I don't know. Like a leviathan, a giant squid.
Because you can go eldritch even. I think someone previously mentioned some type of Cthulhu.
Yeah. And I think we also don't have to necessarily imagine that these sacred beasts map perfectly onto existing animals, right? They could be like chimerical mashups of things, right?
You can go manticore with it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got air, fire. I'm gonna bold the stuff that we don't have answers for yet. I don't think okay, so we're missing pure sky, pure earth, sea slug. That's funny. We're missing pure sky, pure earth, tundra, islands, and no, we do have swamp. Swamp was turtle. So we're about halfway there, right? We're missing air, pure air, earth, air, water, and earth fire. So anybody got anything jumping out at you? Tundra, you like penguin.
Okay. Ooh, that's good. That's fun.
Yeah, it is because that's the air water, right? So it's technically a bird, even though it's flightless. So that ties in our air. It's thematically appropriate to the biome. We like that. Okay. Okay, so we can maybe take that off the list. Um. Okay. What is our? We've still got pure air, pure earth, and earth fire. I feel like pure earth should be some sort of burrowing creature. What do you guys think? Something that like digs, like a mole.
Maybe some kind of rock-eating worm.
Could be a worm.
Maybe hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
Something that lives in the earth for sure. Yeah.
I mean, we got mole. That's good.
The only thing I can think of for air is a Pegasus. Okay, interesting. Okay, let's tentatively say mole for earth. And I'm just gonna put like tentative. I don't know that we're sold on that. Okay, that leaves pure air and earth fire. Pure air, we've had Pegasus. That's an interesting option. It takes it out of the realm of like, hey, this is a real animal, and into the realm of like fantasy shit. Which is cool. There's also islands. I think I maybe do like crab for the island though. Earthfire could be a spider. Fire spider, okay. But we also, I don't know, I think thematically islands, I almost think crab. What do you guys think? An air elemental that takes different forms, so the air itself shows a Pegasus or whatever, yeah. Or a scorpion. We like crab for the islands, okay. Did I lose you, Beast, or are you still there?
Sorry, just had to take a quick break to refresh my water.
Oh, okay, all good. I just wanted to double check. To make sure I wouldn't have like a technical problem.
And this is chat's reminder to stay hydrated.
Yeah, chat, stay hydrated. Scorpion would be good too. Okay, the only thing we're short of then is pure air. What do we? I mean, let's just go Pegasus. Here's the other thing though: the pure air being has been corrupted, right? So if we go Pegasus, we're gonna have evil Pegasuses, which is great. I'm totally down with that. Thinking like a griffin, okay, yeah, Pegasus, griffin.
Pegasus, more like a nightmare. Ba-doom.
Yeah, exactly, right? We have like Thestrals or whatever, which I don't know if those were a mythological thing before Harry Potter, so we're not going to use that. But but like, yeah, like evil shadow horses. Stormlord Eagle Dragon. Right. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the salamander's the first thing that gets corrupted, and I think it should be the Calamity King, or the King of Calamity, something like that. I don't know. I've been reading a lot of like webcomics. So
I like Calamity King because it sounds like an Old West nickname. Like, watch out, that's the Calamity Kid.
right.
Don't make eye contact with the Calamity Kid.
That's funny. Okay. So do we like? We've got the eagle, which is air plus fire. Yeah. Okay. And I think the salamander is the first one, and it's like the king of destruction, the Calamity King. One of the things that I like to do, Ebb and Wings of Calamity, I think Ebb and Wings makes more sense for the Pegasus. Okay. So we have our We have our beasts. What do we think, friends? Did we do it on the beasts? Everybody feeling good with those? The thing I kind of like to do next with my pantheons, which is kind of what this is, even though it's a little abnormal, is I like to think about what are their like epithets or aspects or dominions in a way.
Qualities and auras.
Yeah. So to give you an example, I am actually gonna pull up the one that we did. And this is not to say you guys have to do this way. This is just what I found works for me, and I feel like gives a really cool. It ends up getting you a really cool pantheon, basically.
Yeah, this idea that like higher beings embody a purer quality of something than a lesser being is really common, and it is the basis for most deity worship, or even like any kind of pantheonic, beliefs. And you can steal. Oh my gosh, the Egyptian pantheon is thousands upon thousands of gods and demigods, and they all have like a thing that they're related to.
Yeah.
You can just go to Wikipedia and Google the 326th minor demigod of Anubis, and they happen to be associated with like beer and cow horns, and also the sunset on a rainy day.
Right.
And like just steal those weird things.
Yeah. Where's my I am actually going to pull up the player version of my Itune Pantheon as well. I don't know if I've shared this with you in the past, Beast. I don't think I have. I'm going to send both of these to you
Keeping
if you
secrets.
want. Indeed. Okay, so here's what I like to do, right? So when we made these pantheons, which we did it a little different here, we've got something like 8 cleric domains. So there's life, nature, light, knowledge, tempest, trickery, war, and death. And those are the ones from the player's handbook, although there's more being gifted with the ancient texts. Yeah. Very funny. There's more in the updated materials, but I usually, if I'm building a pantheon, I just start with the base 8. Okay? So when we did this, this is the one we stole, like the Chinese zodiac kind of thing. So we have Osiris the ox. And like I like to give them epithets that relate these different things. So he's the road layer, the plow puller, the wheat bringer, and the harvest lord. Just like, and I kind of stole this from Critical Role from Matt Mercer. He does this with his pantheons, except he gives them like one epithet. I like to give them a couple because I think different groups of people worship these things for different reasons, right? The farmer worships Osiris the ox for a different reason than like probably the cops, like the guards worship Osiris the ox, right? He's over like harvest, commerce, indeed, civilization, roads. We have Ursa the bear mother, the lady of the woods, and the wild queen. I love that reasoning, right? And so you kind of get like the bear mother is like the druids worship the bear mother, right? The lady of the woods, like maybe the rangers worship the lady of the woods. The wild queen could be either one, but it's like it embodies different aspects of like what their domain is. Talus,
the best like historic example of this, if you need something to steal, I think most of us that would be familiar with are the Greek and Roman pantheons. If you put the Greek and Roman pantheons side by side, the Greek pantheon predates it. They came up with all the stories.
Yeah.
The Romans were really lazy, and they said, well, that's not Zeus, that's Jupiter, and Jupiter is our god now.
Right.
But he was the exact same dude.
Sort of like how the Christians stole Christmas, right? I riffed off your pantheon and didn't know it. Oh, hey guys, we're getting raided. What's up? Bonus Mom, thanks for that raid. Welcome back, everybody. Impulse,
Welcome,
Jay, Lexicon, welcome in, friends. Okay, so we're doing some world building. We're on pantheons today. That's not where we thought we would start, but that's where we ended up. So yeah, so these are the ones. One of the two that I'm like the most proud of are Bront the Ram, who is Bront the Stormhorn with the the Changebringer, the Thunder, because the Tempest dude, right, is also the Changebringer, right, or the Thundering Hoof. And then you have Volcus, who's the Harbinger, the Warbringer, the Hearthbreaker, the Bloodfang, the Winter Wolf. So it's like I'm just coming up with these. I adore that. That's so cool. Working on pantheons. Indeed, indeed we are. Grix, what's up? Grix, drink water, nerds. All right, you got it.
Thank you,
Okay.
Griggs.
And then we had a dead god who was killed for trying to usurp the main god. And then the archdevils that we came up with were sort of all based on, they all had like underlings who were based on these other guys. So there's like an evil version of the Ox who's all about legalism and loopholes, arcane secrets, yada yada yada.
And I would actually push people who feel like their world building is getting stale. I think that happens a lot in these types of fantasy settings because we lean on what we already know. And a consistent point of interest I've seen in the tabletop role-playing community is to explore influences of human cultures that are non-Western, non-medieval cultures. So look for the things that you don't know. Go to a map, click down a pin and say, okay, where is this place? I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, Western Africa. And you say, okay, I'm going to learn about the history and culture of whatever culture existed 2,000 years ago in this place. And I'm going to take inspiration from it.
Yeah. So what if the salamander is not just fire, but change and rebirth? And that gets twisted into destruction when they are calamitized. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And I do think one of the things we would do with all of these things is begin to associate certain things with them, right? So, the fire and the rebirth kind of thing. Totally makes sense. So let's look at this one. This one is more fleshed out because this is my actual pantheon for Itune, which is where Ainor is. Ainor is one of the continents in Itune. So if you're looking at Ages of Ainor and where does it come from, that's my homebrew setting. These are the deities of my homebrew setting, right? So I did the same thing. Light and life went under one. The grave, nature, whatever. So I have Ilios, who is the Radiant, the Starfather, the Dawnfather, the Daybringer, the Everlight. And I just did the exact same thing. I gave them all commandments and symbols and stuff, right? And this one is sort of thanks for the sub, bonus one. This one is a little bit more fleshed out. So anyway, jumping back into this, then we've got these sacred beasts. So hence when I'm jumping into like the salamander is the calamity king, right? That's kind of the epithet I'm going with.
And epithet, for those who, I'm sure you've read the word or seen it or heard it, just to clarify, because I love it. I love defining terms. It's basically just like a he who must not be named type title.
Yeah.
It's a title that's given that is not the name of the thing, typically because saying the name of the thing is seen as exerting power or inviting scrutiny in some way, that name has power in a way, so you refer to them by a subtitle.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we've got our sacred beasts kind of starting to take shape, right?
Ooh.
But maybe we should start trying to associate certain cleric domains with some of our sacred beasts. What do we think? Where's the map? Map is right here, bonus mom.
Yeah, so I think that's an excellent framework to build out a homebrew is to mimic an existing established setting. The different domains of clerics. exist mechanically, but they also exist for lore reasons that are long withstanding in D&D.
Yeah.
So you can take that framework because the mechanics exist. Now you can reskin them for your world.
Right.
Or what I do in my setting actually is to limit the domains in such a way that domains can emerge if a character gives me a reason to bring them into the world.
Yeah.
And in that way, you can sort of delay your world building a tiny bit until you have a reason to use it. Because if you're a professional DM, especially, you have to use your prep time to prep for the things that your players are paying for.
Right. So, Tempest could go with the eagle. Yeah, so Tempest would make a good thing for the eagle. I think that I agree. I agree with that. And then we also have to ask, what does it mean that some of these guys have been corrupted? Have other beings taken on their domains in a good sense, or are those domains just... Who knows? That's a question to be answered later, I think, but it's something to remember to ask later. And so
you know what? I actually just stumbled upon another tip for world building. Have talk to people, because this is really easy. There's what, 5 or 6 of us that are just chiming in occasionally, and look how much we've done in a short amount of time. So when you're world building alone, I know it's very satisfying because I do it often. But sometimes sharing your world is what makes it meaningful.
We think war can go to the crab. I think that also makes sense.
War crab.
War crab.
Yes.
How did the corruption happen?
Take inspiration, whoever suggested.
Yeah, right. How did the corruption happen? So Black Moon, we decided that the central tension of our setting is going to be basically dragons versus giants, except the giants in this sense are going to be very like druidic, and they're going to have ties to these creatures called the sacred beasts. And the sacred beasts are basically the gods of our setting. And they are tied sort of to these different elements. They're tied to some of these different like domains. But what essentially in the history of the world, when we started to see sapient creatures, humans, elves, orcs, goblins, yada, 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 those creatures experienced suffering and evil and greed and all of those like negative things in a much more pronounced way than their only sentient counterparts, right? So like as compared to plants and animals and even bacteria, etc., the thinking creatures began to experience those emotions far more intensely. And I sort of think that we're looking at a cycle of like reincarnation type of thing, maybe. I don't know. We haven't fully decided that, but that like when those creatures, sapient creatures, died, that like they managed to, or even just existing with those negative emotions. Maybe it's not the death thing. Maybe it's just living with the negative emotions. We haven't really decided that yet, TBD. But it basically the existence of all that at sort of advanced negativity managed to corrupt some of the sacred beasts. Specifically, the sacred beasts of fire and air and fire and earth and fire. We think. So, leaving the sacred beasts of water, earth and water, air and water and earth. I guess I need to make this. And so there's like, we imagine our beasts as like a compass with like elemental air, water, or air, earth, fire, water kind of thing. And like, and then there's like interstitial, right? Northeast, northwest, etc. So in that like compass, half of them are corrupted and half of them are not. And the half that are corrupted are like, they give rise to the dragons, we think. And maybe it's only that 2 of them are corrupted. I don't know. We're still working on it. Again, TBD. It would be cool if you had a life domain related to fire initially and then someone else has to take it. Water could have been or is destruction. Water damage is the worst, but now needs to carry the life domain as the Salamander Sacred Beast dropped it. Yeah. So I think there's a lot we can do there, and this bears looking at again, but I think maybe we're hitting the end of that rope to some extent, although I want to talk more about these giants. We talked a lot about the Sacred Beasts, right, and their
Now we
relationship
have
to the dragons.
Establish the competition.
Right. And I think I almost wonder if maybe some of the giants haven't like semi-ascended or something. I don't know. I think there's some questions to be answered here. In order to take on some of the responsibility of the corrupted ones. But again, I'm just spitballing. So, let's start talking about the giants.
Yeah, what do y'all like about giants? How about some famous giants to spur our imagination so that we have things to steal from? What are some of y'all's favorite giants? James and the Giant Peach.
There's Nobody.
Nobody is a fantastic example. For those of you who don't know, Nobody is the name given in the Odyssey to the Cyclops that Odysseus ends up tricking and then stabbing in the eye with a fire-sharpened wooden stake. And he gives his name as Nobody as a way to attempt to say nobody is home.
It's actually Polyphemus is the Cyclops, and I think it's actually that Odysseus tells Polyphemus that his name is Nobody.
His name is Nobody. Yeah. I had it backwards.
Yeah.
But if that was the reference that you were going
that
for,
was the reference I was going for. Yes.
Then it's the one I got. So we landed in the same place.
What was the one with the blue ox? We've got Rockbiter. Of course, you have giants in
Paul Bunyan.
Paul Bunyan. You have
he is a
Lord
classic druid, or he could be a druid, or even a like a ranger or a beastmaster giant. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Davin's gonna have double inspiration next session, bud. Keep it up.
Let's see. We like the direction. Maybe the Deep Lord Sea Giants were guardians, or the old ones. There's the Iron Giant.
He is a type of elemental.
That is true.
He's a construct.
Like clockwork, yeah. We've been at this for about 2 hours.
Hagrid's a good one. I'll offer another one that I actually mentioned earlier. Umbaba. Umbaba is the first victim, essentially, of the Gilgamesh epic. And Umbaba is this giant which guards a cedar forest. And in Mesopotamia, it's a river valley. There are no woods. So the only way to build things that last out of good lumber was for kings to venture into the dangerous foothills, into the cedar forests. And Umbaba was their celestial appointed guardian. He was placed there by the gods to protect the woods. And Gilgamesh and his buddy Enkidu trick him, end up killing him, incurring the wrath of the gods, but harvesting precious lumber, which cements his right as king of Uruk.
Nice. Let's see, we have Atlas. I don't know if Sphinxes would count, but all the ones I've seen are giant. Fenrir is a giant wolf. Let's see. I'm looking at just a random article, but there's Atlas, Balor, the Irish one-eyed god of death, Hrungnir, the drunken Norse giant. Let's see. Goliath, of course, the biblical giant. Polyphemus from the Odyssey. Oni in Japanese folklore. Gogmagog, the last British giant. Gogmagog. Anyway, so I think the way that we've sort of set it up now, Ugabunga, the one from Niflheim, Ugabunda, I think these folks start as servants of the sacred beasts? I think maybe they are the first creations? Question mark. What do we think? Does that seem like a thing?
Bold of you to assume. Of course, that is what we're doing.
Because I almost see it as like they're the prime helpers and caretakers of the sacred beasts. You know, they're like made to be their servants, and as this, because I think maybe like the sacred beasts, like they're tied to the land and they're tied to their domain, and the giants are like the caretakers of it, and as long as it's taken care of, then the sacred beasts are able to like diffuse their influence into the environment and shit. I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I get it.
The other question we have to ask is, to some extent, which takes us back to the sacred beasts for a second, are the sacred beasts the creators of all of this, or did something else create them? And does that being still interfere with the world, or did it sort of like wind up the clock, wind up the music box and then leave?
I would say that there is a certain point at which you can go no further back productively in the history of your world, unless you're dealing with like an unmaking and a remaking of a world type deal. I find that usually having I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that we need to say that there's anything beyond what we've already come up with in terms of establishing there were giants, now there are less giants, and that is the current state of the world. I think you only really need like one big step back.
Yeah, I suppose.
But it absolutely depends on the purpose of your setting.
Yeah.
And the story that you want to tell to your players.
Right. I think for me, the question I'm trying to answer is the nature of the giants. Because to me, it's a little different if the nature of the giants and the nature of the sacred beasts, right? Because if the sacred beasts are fully imbued with the power to create all of creation, right? Then that means a different thing than if the sacred beasts were themselves created, but were created.
It implies different things.
Yeah, were created in a way that like their nature diffuses their power to the intent of what their purpose is, and that the giants were created by something else in order to sort of caretake those sacred beasts.
The reasons for them existing are establish the conflict.
Yeah.
Of them coexisting.
Right. And so to me it's like, okay, it's the difference between the sacred beasts created the giants and the giants are their servants in the sense of like angels and gods versus like the giants as like the system administrators and the sacred beasts as like the code that runs the program. You know what I mean? Like
right.
So, and I think that's why I want to answer that question is it helps me get a sense of like, okay, how do these two things relate to each other? Like we say caretakers, but like I want to get at what are their duties and who gave them those duties? Are they self-appointed? I do want to answer those questions a little bit. I don't think we need to like dig in at much further than that, but I do want to get a sense of like, it gives me a sense of the Giants' purpose in doing what they do, and I think that will help drive us down that road.
What does chat think?
Let's see. We have mayhap one giant combines elemental things that split into elements, and the spirit beast took form from them. We have the great scribe that makes these worlds and studies their progress. We have Okay. So we have one. He Who Waits thinks that we have a creator who basically like makes the music box and winds it up and sets it down and just watches what happens, basically, and doesn't interfere. We have Black Moon saying maybe the giants are actually responsible for the sacred beasts. And that the sacred beasts kind of, I guess, it's like a and then maybe that's an interesting idea, like that these beings created something greater than themselves and then decided to kind of like worship and take care of it.
Yeah, that's a cool twist, you know, that the creators are worshiping their creation in a way.
Yeah.
It's a kind of reflexive type of worship.
Yeah, and it's almost like they've made themselves less in the making of the sacred beast somehow.
No, yeah, that's kind of an iRobot scenario, right? Where
yeah,
you're sort of creating your own extinction problem, your own competitor in a way.
Right. An intelligent giant meant to study and learn more of the elements grow power for the sacred beast. They do a lot of actual interacting. Those that have taken on the power of creating something greater themselves would be awesome, like an AI that the great creator that gained sentience. And you stole that from an anime, fair enough. Well, that's what we're here to do today, is steal.
Exactly. Good. You did it right.
Yeah.
Gold star, A+.
So what do we think? Let's poll chat on this one. Can I make a poll? I can. Okay.
All right, chat. There's a poll in.
Question. Are the giants the creators or the created? Question mark. Response. Creators. Response. Created.
Yeah,
we're going to set this for 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes to vote. So there is a poll in chat. Hopefully you're able to click and answer that poll. Like the idea of them creating something greater than themselves. Your favorite game's antagonist is like that. Yeah. It's also a very Frankenstein story in a way, right?
It's pronounced Frankenstein.
Har, har, har. Listen, 14 is my limit on Schnitzengruben, okay? Can you scroll up for a second so I can see the beasts? Yes, there are the sacred beasts.
I'm right here, guys.
It seems like it's pretty conclusive. So far, 5 of the 11 people in chat have voted for creators and 0 have voted for created.
Created is a dark horse. I'm taking bets 30-1. Come on, guys. You can submit your bets by sending bits to Pixel.
That's why he knows all about them. Yeah, so I like the idea. I'm warming to the idea of the giants as the. We've got a little bit left. We're at about 3/4 done. Okay. Beast. He Who Waits has granted you inspiration. I guess you're playing in the level 21 shot, aren't you? So I guess you'll start that with chat inspiration if you want to go ahead and roll.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I actually still have to make that character. That's a good reminder. Thank you.
Yeah. Incidentally, guys, on September the 9th, this will be next Friday, I am running a level 21 shot. He Who Waits will be there, I believe. Beast will be there. Our friend Jacob and Vincent Page. I think those are the 4 players I have, although I'm open to maybe one more cast member if I could find somebody who can handle a level 20 character. Okay, creators won in a landslide.
All right, so everyone who submitted bets, you can submit money to my PayPal, my Cash App,
okay.
Venmo.
So the giants created the sacred beasts, in effect, creating something greater than themselves, which They went on to worship / caretake. Okay. Here is where that sends me. You guys can say, let's go a different direction if you want. I think the giants create the sacred beasts, which in turn sort of like imbue the land with like magic and spiritual power and the elements and all that shit. I don't know, whatever. Eventually, the spiritual beasts and the things they create that they're imbuing with magic, whatever, give rise to people, and and this makes the giants very nervous, and the giants are split about what to do about this. Beast made the joke and you had to. It's fine. He who waits. It's totally fine. We need a point redemption for hurt them more to give the DM inspiration. That's funny. Okay. Their creations begin to create. Yeah. And so they give rise to, sapient beings, which then in turn sort of corrupt the some of the sacred beasts. And so I think what we have is like different factions of the giants then, right? We have some who are like, we should not exterminate all the people, and I think we have others who are like, we should exterminate all the people.
These humans are dangerous
because they've done it. They've corrupted the sacred beasts.
They done fluffed it.
What do you think? What is that? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
I see some confirmation in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're the real masters.
And maybe the giants being pro versus anti-human, maybe this is more about like rebooting creation. Like we want a fresh start on this shit. Like clearly we fucked up when we made the sacred beasts.
Mulligan.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
And some of the other ones are like, no, we can still save it. Right? We can still fix it. We're supposed to be taking care of all this shit. We're the
masters of the universe.
We're the caretakers.
A Highlander reference. For all who appreciate
their attempt to reboot creation could be the corruption. Oh, lexicon. That's a great idea.
That's very good.
Okay.
And if you didn't steal that from somewhere, right, then you need to write it down.
Right? Okay. So the giants created the sacred beast, created something greater than themselves, where they went on to worship and caretake. The sacred beasts, through imbuing the land with magic, eventually give rise to sapient races. Humans, elves, orcs, goblins, etc. This makes the giants extremely nervous that these beings have advanced thought, the capacity for tools, magic, and I thought of something else, but I lost it. Doesn't matter. As a result, the giants are torn between two factions. Reboot creation and undo the existence. Redo creation and unmake the sacred beasts, reclaiming their powers, or try to fix, or no, I guess really just try to live with the results of the sacred beasts' creations, kind of. What that means is a faction of giants try to reboot creation by killing / absorbing one of the sacred beasts. This leads to the Calamity, which maybe we'll rename because the Calamity is from Critical Role, but whatever. Okay.
You know what? There's only so many words,
Right.
and there's even fewer good ones.
Right.
Give yourself permission.
Yeah.
To say
so.
Calamity.
Yeah. So for me, given that I stream a bunch and may one day stream in this
right.
thing, I want to avoid it. But you guys in your home games call shit the Calamity all day, right?
So, Pixel, I just shared something that I've been working on in the background this whole time while we've been forming up all of the various elements and their combinations. I know that a lot of us are visual learners, and so I mocked up a little bit of a chart, a planar chart, as it were, so that we can, I guess, start putting names in places for those of us who like colors and visual learning.
Okay. All right, I have it up. You think you just did the same thing as Beast? Okay. You were inspired by a game, which if you like video games, this type of thing, you need to play Horizon Zero Dawn like yesterday. Very good.
Horizon Zero Dawn is fantastic. Whoever said that
was
amazing. Lexicon, amazing recommendation. I want to point out that the designers of Horizon Forbidden West looked for inspiration in actual human history, and you can do the same.
Yeah, that's also true. We steal a lot from fiction, but history is just as ripe for these kinds of things. Okay.
I threw this little thing together. I am not very good at stuff, which is why I don't stream. I am not a visual person generally, but I understand the powerful tool that is the visual aid. And so I tend to just use Google Draw to make very simple diagrams like this for things like puzzles and such. So if you are like me and you're not very gifted, MS Paint, like seriously, scribbles are better than nothing sometimes, and sometimes just big blocks of color.
Can I rename these things?
Now, Lexicon, have you played Horizon Forbidden West?
Okay.
Which is an amazing sequel to an already fantastic game that even further expands the cultural references to human history.
Oh, not what I want. Yo, look at that. Can I do?
Ooh. So this is an example of a much more advanced way of going about what I did, which if what I was doing was like stacking color blocks, David or Pixel is building something out of like toothpicks and glue. He's a few grades ahead of me.
Well, yeah. So I googled compass generator. That's another secret of world building. Google the thing you need and the word generator, and some other dickhead on the internet has built a tool.
Has automated. It might not be great, but it'll do some of the work.
Okay. Also, Ace has done the same thing here, and has actually given us the.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that's even simpler than what I did, which is why it's probably more effective.
Yeah, really good stuff here, and even has the different folks in it, which is great.
Great job, Ace.
Okay,
you take inspiration, Ace.
Okay, so here we go. This is like the story so far. The giants created the sacred beasts, in effect creating something greater than themselves, which they then went on to worship and take care of. The sacred beasts, through imbuing the land with magic, eventually give rise to the sapient races, humans, elves, orcs, blah, blah, blah. This makes the giants extremely nervous that these beings have essentially advanced thought, and I guess one day may supplant them. the capacity for tools, they can use magic, and that they one day could supplant the giants. As a result, some of the giants are like, we fucked up, let's start over. Some of the other giants are like, no, we can't just genocide all of existence because you guys have cold feet about people, existing. And so one group of giants try to reboot the creation by killing and absorbing one of the sacred beasts, and this leads to the calamitization of one of the sacred beasts, and then the further corruption.
I just want to point out that the ice giants didn't have a choice whether or not they had cold feet.
That's true. Seeing it visually is interesting. If we swap the eagle with a more mythical creature, the bottom left quadrant are all mythical. Interesting. Pegasus, eagle, salamander. Oh. And that would be a good way to, where did the Dragonborn come from and are they evil? That's a great question.
Or are they sapient and they have a choice of ideology?
Yeah. I think maybe, are there good dragons too? That's another good question. Do we have good dragons?
Oof. 1-2 punches, guys. Excellent questions.
Let me write these questions down because we may not answer them all today.
Sorry, I said guys. I should use less gendered language. Thank you, y'all.
Dragons. Okay, there we go, friends. Where do Dragonborn come from? Are there good dragons? Where do they come from? If they exist. So if the eagle was more like a griffin or something, it creates an interesting arc. Well, griffin was the other suggestion we got for eagle. And we also said Quetzalcoatl, which we could just call it a Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, I mean, Quetzalcoatl is, at least historically,
is mythical.
It is an eagle with, it's a scaled eagle with feathers.
I say let's send it.
Do it. Fix it in post. I feels like a good opportunity to say to folks who may feel daunted by the amount of detail and work that we're putting into. When you world build, you don't have to do this. You can literally make one thing. And this also goes back to a tip I threw out earlier, which is when you're choosing categories of things to decide on, start with small numbers, preferably 5 or less. You can do that from the get. You can say, you know what? I'm going to make one town. It's going to be on one mountain. There's going to be one dragon. And there's going to be one god.
In fact.
And that is it.
We can do a new... Just to
and
sort of
your world does not have to be bigger than that. And I guarantee you, it can be just as engaging to your players, even if they don't know what's going on outside of that, or if nothing is going on outside.
Yeah.
You have my permission. The next time your players, tell you that your campaign setting or whatever, if they criticize it, just say, East said I could do this, and you have my permission to go as small as you want.
Yeah, so that is good advice. And one of the things I would also say is build what you need, right? If you're starting a low-level campaign with, first-level adventurers and people haven't played very much D&D, you can build one town and one adventure location, and sometimes they can be the same place, right? And that's enough. You can name one other town so that the players have a sense of what's the next thing down the road in whatever direction. And that is it, right? In order to make... And maybe we should do that on our next world building stream, is take a break from...
We should make a starting hub.
Macro. But let's next time, and guys try to hold me to this, next time we do a thing, let's go hey, you're a new DM. You want to DM D&D tonight, and you would like to homebrew yourself a single little town, and we'll really try to keep ourselves back to like what's the bare minimum of detail you need to do something like this, so you can kind of see how easy it is, because we're going like all over the place. We're going macro, we're going cosmology, we're going history, we're going creation myth, and we also have zoomed in super close at one point on the last stream on this volcano region, right? We have a lot of detail about that. So anyway, to catch up on chat for a second. Okay, do the dragons all have elemental associations? If an eagle is corrupted to a quetzalcoatl and a salamander is corrupted to a dragon, what was corrupted to be a Pegasus? Very good question. I should write that down here in a second. It's only a room with a guy named Bill. Is Bill a dick or a great guy? Love Bill. He doesn't have problems, but who doesn't? Okay, so let me keep that question. What was corrupted to become a Pegasus? Or the Pegasus was the thing that was corrupted to begin with. What's it called now? I think that's a better question, because I think Pegasus, like, we're gonna think that's the uncorrupted version, right? So let's just sort of italicize what was the Pegasus corrupted into question mark. That's the thing. Honestly, what I would do is I would go looking through the monster manual for stuff. Or just Google what is an evil Pegasus.
A nightmare, I would think.
Yeah. Well, there's a fiery death horse. That's pretty spot on to what we're looking at. Here's a nightmare Pegasus. Ooh, look at that. That's fucking tight. Here's another thing. Google image search some stuff and see what's evocative and then steal the ideas from it. I'm not saying use people's arts on streams, but use people's arts in your home game, sure. Right? Like,
a great tool that I use, you can create a lookbook of sorts, basically a Pinterest board with a little blurb of description, and then you can put an image right next to it in your notes if you're a DM, or even if you're a player, if you're trying to describe things about your character, like where they come from, or their friends, or their god or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have reference images, you can stare at them and describe them as a visual aid for you, so that you're not having to pull words out of thin air. You can literally look at something and describe it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so I think we're calling it a nightmare. Probably it's an evil Pegasus, basically. The Ebon Wings of Death. I love that. Whoever said that, I think that was maybe He Who Waits, said that earlier as like, I think you were talking about what the salamander is called, but I like that as an epithet for the nightmare. Cool. Well, guys, awesome. We're at about 2 hours. My voice is kind of fucked, honestly, because I think I'm getting sick. We've done a lot of really interesting work tonight.
Yeah, why don't we do a little recap?
Yeah. So tonight we talked about a lot of stuff. We sort of decided on the idea of working on dragons in our setting. And one of the things that was suggested was that we do dragons versus ocean deep lords.
Next? Dungeons?
Right? Dragons versus ocean deep lords. The ocean deep lords led us into this idea of titans, which led us into this idea of sacred beasts and elementals, which we started to then do our cosmology, right? So we have this sort of planes of air and fire being dominated by dragonkin, and water and earth being dominated by giantkin. We have these sacred beasts. The dragons are corrupted sacred beasts, basically, and they're all sort of associated with, whatever. I almost wonder if maybe the crab didn't get corrupted or not. I don't know. I have some question marks here. Anyway, we've assigned some animals to be our sacred beasts tentatively. We've decided that the storming cloud giants have been exterminated and that the dragons have basically taken their place in the skies. Somebody suggested that dragons eat magic, which led me to ask, what is magic in this setting? That's a sort of question we'll want to come back to later. And we also have the question of what does it mean for certain domains that their sacred beasts are corrupted? And then we started talking about the giants. We decided that the giants actually created the sacred beasts, in effect creating something greater than themselves that they then went on to worship. that the sacred beasts sort of made the humans, elves, and orcs and shit. I don't know if they did that intentionally or if that was just a side effect of the other stuff that they do. Kind of a question mark there. But that the giants, basically, some of the giants were really nervous about the humans existing or the people existing, and said, "Hey, maybe we should like rethink all this." And some of the other giants were like, "No, we should not do that." And then the ones
I
who,
actually want to jump in to say that having unanswered questions, that those are quest lines. Those are high level quest lines in your world building. So leaving gaps in your world building, it sometimes is useful because it gives you a question to answer when your players are high enough level to answer it.
yeah,
And that, I think that ties in also to what Pixel said is prepare what you need.
yeah. Okay, and then that basically one faction of the giants tried to kill one of the sacred beasts, which led to the salamander being corrupted. Probably they tried to kill the salamander and absorb its power to reboot the world, because they were going to start with the salamander and then use the salamander's power to kill the other sacred beasts. And that didn't work out. The salamander became a dragon and corrupted some of the other beasts, and here we are. So that's kind of the work that we did today. We have a lot of questions left to answer.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah. We have a lot of questions left to answer. We think that we also asked, are there ghosts and are there undead? So this is a lot of like cosmology and world and history stuff, but it has practical applications, right? The giants, like they're physical beings that live in this world, right? I think that's how we are conceiving of this. So that has a big impact on how we start to build stuff from here on out, which is very cool. Also, we kind of retroactively made some cool decisions about this this dragon thing. We initially were like, okay, we have this corrupted dragon. Maybe it's like a shadow dragon or a Draco Lich or something. Well, now we know exactly what this thing is. This is the salamander that got corrupted. Just boom, in that volcano right there, that gives rise to this whole ash blight mess that was the focus of our last world building. We've like retroactively made that even cooler than it was. So, and tied it into like really serious world building, like sort of history of the world kind of things. That, and it's probably true that like most people don't even know that that's what happened, right? And they're just like, yeah, that place is just fucked up. We don't even know why it's fucked up, but it is. But we can get this cool ore out of it, and of course they get the cool ore out of it because the sacred beasts imbue the land with magic, right? So they're still imbuing that ore with magic. It's just fucked up evil magic now, right?
Yeah. It's magic that is out of phase with the balance of the world.
Right, because it's purely for destruction. Right? And that's so that's what we've done today. Super good stream, guys. Next time we're gonna take a break, and I think we'll put it in this world. Oh, Pam, thank you for that sub very much. You're an absolute legend. But I think we'll take a break from the macro stuff. I think we'll still build like in this world, but I think we'll pick a place, maybe in the Great Lakes region, maybe in this breadbasket region, somewhere on the map. We'll just plop down and say, hey, there's a small town here that's a starting town. You know, what amount of detail do we need to where we could run a starting town in this spot? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw out some summarized tips that I think I sprinkled throughout this talk. Limit yourself. Having limits is good actually because it keeps you focused and it helps you finish ideas. So start small and you never have to go beyond that. You can stay small. Your world is think of it in terms of its purpose. If your world exists to be a place for you to dump awesome ideas into, and that's all it is, and then that's what you need it to be, and it can be that. So allow your world to be what it needs to be, and it'll tell you how big it needs to be. based on what you need it for.
Yeah.
Oh, and steal everything. My personal favorite is human history, myth, and legend, because humans are incredibly creative. We invent dozens of thousands of languages throughout time, and we tend to think that our opinions are worth recording. So we have some crazy thoughts from across the human psyche and across time available to us for free, usually at our fingertips if you have access to the internet, which I hope you do if you're here. Otherwise, how did you get here? Are you a ghost? And that's the last one. Are there ghosts? You have to ask yourself, are there ghosts? It spurs an enormous question upon question chain for your world. Are there ghosts?
Yeah. And then final thing, Pixel's world building process. 1, decide on a cool thing that excites you about the setting. 2, ask what must be true as a result of that. Repeat steps 1 and 2 until you hit a brick wall. No, repeat step 2. Repeat step 2 until you hit a brick wall. Then repeat step 1 followed by step 2 until you're done. And that's my basic process, Ghosts of Dragons. Okay. Decide on a cool thing that excites you about the setting, and then ask yourself what logically follows from that and begin to extrapolate, and then repeat that until you hit a brick wall. And then go back to step 1 and say, okay, what's another cool thing I can decide? And just chase those leads down. Sometimes they'll take you down crazy rabbit holes that you end up never using. That can happen. And so that's why you keep the other stuff in mind about building just what you need to the extent that you can and all of those things. But, that is my general kind of advice on the process is rather than getting paralyzed by the possibilities, decide on one cool thing that excites you and start to extrapolate from it. And then if you get stuck, pick another thing. So.
Yeah, and mine is steal something incredibly robust but obscure, and then pass it off as your own, and then
Yes,
never allow anyone to know that you're not a genuine genius.
Yeah. And then the other thing, as you've seen tonight, which is we've decided a bunch of cool stuff about our little ash blight zone. And then, we got to the end of that rope a little bit. There's more work to be done there, but, we kind of did a bunch of it. And then we went and decided another cool thing and actually managed to work our way backwards to connect it to the thing we had already done in a way that was cool and fresh and that we never would have done the other direction, right? So your world building will begin to converge on itself in those really cool ways, and that will be very exciting too. So I think this is a great example of that, of the kind of benefit of running your operation in that sort of way when world building, because we've now taken something we had already decided and sort of tied it into the history of this world in a really cool way that if we had started from the premise of, hey, let's keep working on the volcano, never would have turned out that way, right?
And that might be a fun little secret tip also, is that give yourself time to digest your ideas, put the thing down and step away from it, take a break, and then come back.
Yeah.
Because you'll hit a brick wall for a few reasons, and one of them might be that you've done too much processing and you need to cool down a little bit. Yeah. Basically.
And then the final thing I'll say before I ask you guys to go find someone for us to raid, if you don't mind, help me with that, is that another thing that you can do is stream yourself doing this and ask all of your internet friends for cool ideas, because you'll seem like a genius, even though at least 30% of the ideas were theirs.
And as we all know, they were all actually mine.
Right, of course. And by his, we mean mine. So. No, great work though, guys. Super awesome. That was
thanks for hanging out with us.
Crazy fun. I've really enjoyed how these world building sessions are going. We're gonna keep doing them. We'll do, like I said, next time we'll do like a starting town, and then we'll kind of build this till we get some answers of a bunch of different stuff on the map. We build out some factions and stuff. We may have 5 to 10 total sessions of doing this, interspersed with other things I might do. But Thursdays are gonna, I think, kind of be my D&D night for this kind of stuff. Excuse me, for this kind of stuff. So, with all of that in mind, however, who should we go raid? Vincent is live. Bubble Boy's live. God, everybody's live tonight. Holy shit. Friday night is the fucking night, kids.
It is Thursday night.
Thursday night's the fucking night, kids.
That's okay.
I know what days are. I kind of want to see, do you guys want to go see more D&D stuff, or do you want to go visit somebody we know? It is Thursday. All you critters. Yeah. World building for other people is your favorite activity. Very cool. What's your pleasure, friends?
I also love helping people world build. I know a ton of obscure references, so if you're ever stuck and you need a cool thing to learn more about, I can turn you on to it.
Yeah. Also, guys, this is totally unrelated, but it is September. I believe they're offering discounts on subs through Twitch. So, not saying you should sub to me like right this second or anything, but you know, that is a thing out there. Is that you get discounts on subs these days? Okay. Is the Nerd Asylum live right now? They're playing Starfighter.
We have a suggestion for VP.
Someone wants to go raid VP? Okay, yeah, let's do it.
It's he who waits.
Well, everyone go say hi to my wife. Hit him with the AOA.
Waifu days.
Yes, you go say hi to my waifu days. I really need to get a raid emote for the Ages of Ainor stuff. So copy that raid message, friends. And definitely go say hi to Vincent for me. Wrong channel for the That's My Wife. Indeed, I don't have a That's My Wife sound clip on this one. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. This was incredibly fun. This will be on YouTube. Final thing. These streams are going up on the YouTube if you want to go back and rewatch any of this. And when we get it kind of all done, I am going to release all these notes and this map to everybody in the Discord, and you guys can take the shit and go nuts with it. So we're going to do this raid. Catch you later, friends.
Woo!
Okay.